2:14 a.m., the Port of Los Angeles. The container doors fly open. The FBI freezes. It's not drugs. It's 30 incubators, 30 comatose children waiting to be sold. Before they can recover, a hail of gunfire erupts. Mercenaries open fire wildly to protect this cargo. What power lies behind this, making them willing to fight to the death? And will the FBI team successfully rescue those 30 children? Don't take your eyes off the screen, because the answer coming up will send shivers down your spine. The rain fell in sheets over the Port of Los Angeles on the morning of December 15th, turning the industrial sprawl of Terminal Island into a blurred landscape of gray steel and black asphalt. When the city usually slept in anticipation of the holiday, but for the FBI Special Weapons and Tactics Division, there was no peace to be found. At exactly 2:14 a.m. local time, a heavy silence hung over the abandoned container yard near berth 57B. This silence was deceptive. It was the quiet before a violent storm that would eventually ripple all the way to the highest corridors of power in Washington, D.C. The FBI had received credible intelligence regarding a massive shipment of narcotics arriving from South America. The raid was supposed to be a standard interdiction operation. The team moved with practiced fluidity, their boots splashing silently on the wet pavement. They were armed with Sig Sauer MCX Rattler short-barreled rifles, weapons designed specifically for the close-quarters chaos of urban combat. The FBI agents utilized M84 stun grenades to disorient the defenders before neutralizing 12 hostiles. When the smoke cleared and the area was secured, the agents moved to inspect the cargo. They expected bales of cocaine or crates of fentanyl. Instead, they found a horror that defied immediate comprehension. The interior of the 40-foot container had been converted into a mobile medical facility. Inside were 30 high-technology incubators. Each unit contained a child placed in an artificial coma connected to intravenous lines, ensuring their survival during the long ocean transit. The shock of the discovery was compounded by the digital intelligence recovered from the site lead mercenary. A ruggedized tablet revealed that this horrific scene was merely a logistics hub. A much larger shipment, designated as the Ark, containing 200 more victims, was scheduled for transport. The clock was already ticking. The children were being moved to an aircraft that was set to depart in exactly 4 hours. The location was not a port, but a remote airstrip deep in the American Southwest. The focus of the operation shifted instantly from the tactical level in Los Angeles to the strategic command centers at the Pentagon. The Department of Justice coordinated immediately with the National Reconnaissance Office to repurpose surveillance satellites orbiting over the southern United States. Within 20 minutes, the analysts had a hit. Thermal sensors picked up an anomaly in the middle of the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, roughly 5 miles north of the Mexican border. The location was a ghost town of abandoned mining structures that did not appear on recent geological surveys. The intelligence profile on the leader of this operation sent a chill through the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The target was Viktor Volkov, known in the underworld as the Butcher. Volkov was a former commander of the Russian Spetsnaz Special Forces who had defected to become a broker for a revitalized faction of the Sinaloa cartel. He was not a common criminal. He was a tactician who fortified his base with the discipline of a state military. Aerial reconnaissance identified defensive perimeters that included Igla S-Man portable air defense systems capable of shooting down law enforcement helicopters and long-range sniper nests positioned on the surrounding ridges. This was a military target on American soil. Digital forensics experts at Fort Meade began tracking the money. They intercepted a blockchain transaction of $85 million in Monero XMR, a cryptocurrency favored for its privacy features. The transaction was encrypted with military-grade algorithms, but the NSA managed to crack a fragment of the accompanying communication. The decoded message was terrifyingly simple. It ordered the cleaning of the warehouse and stated that no witnesses were to remain. The implication was clear. If Volkov sensed the operation was compromised, he would execute the 200 captives before fleeing. The timeline was unforgiving. A C-130 Hercules transport aircraft, which had been stolen and repainted with civilian markings, was currently fueling on a hidden dirt runway adjacent to the compound. The intelligence analysts estimated the fueling process and pre-flight checks would take 3 hours and 45 minutes. That was the hard limit. Once that plane took off, the victims would disappear into the global black market forever. The situation demanded a response that exceeded the capabilities of local law enforcement or even the FBI hostage rescue team alone. The president authorized the activation of the Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC. The decision was made to put boots on the ground. An airstrike was impossible due to the presence of the children. A direct frontal assault would likely trigger the execution order. The mission required surgical precision executed with overwhelming force. 3 of the most elite units in the United States military and law enforcement apparatus were mobilized into a single task force. The assault element would consist of operators from the Army compartmented elements, commonly known as Delta Force, designated as Alpha Team. Their primary objective was the elimination of high-value targets and the destruction of heavy defensive weaponry. The rescue element was assigned to the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, or SEAL Team 6, designated as Bravo Team. Their sole focus was the security and evacuation of the hostages. Supporting them was the FBI Hostage Rescue Team, tasked with medical triage and crime scene processing once the area was secured. The operators were outfitted with the pinnacle of night fighting technology. They wore the Ground Panoramic Night Vision Goggles, GPNV-G18, which utilized 4 separate tubes to provide a 97-degree field of view, turning the pitch-black desert into a crisp image of white phosphor. Their weapons were HK-416 assault rifles, equipped with integrated suppressors to minimize the acoustic footprint of the engagement. To gain intelligence inside the structures without alerting the guards, the teams deployed Black Hornet nanodrones. These tiny, unmanned aerial vehicles were small enough to fit in the palm of a hand and silent enough to fly within feet of a target without detection. The operation commenced at 4:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. To bypass the radar systems guarding the airspace above the cartel compound, the assault team performed a high-altitude, low-opening jump. They exited the transport aircraft at 25,000 feet into the freezing, thin air of the upper atmosphere. They free fell for minutes through the darkness, waiting until the last possible second to deploy their chutes at low altitude. The team landed silently in the soft sand, 1.2 miles from the objective. The approach was a grueling march through the abrasive desert wind. The sandstorm provided cover, but it also reduced visibility to near zero. The operators moved as phantoms, their heat signatures masked by thermal cloaks. Tension spiked as the team breached the outer perimeter. A Black Hornet drone glided through a broken window of the main command building and relayed a video feed that stopped the breath of the mission commander. Viktor Volkov was standing in the center of the control room. In his right hand, he held a dead man switch connected to a remote detonator. The drone feed showed blocks of C4 plastic explosive wired to the structural pillars of the holding facility where the children were kept. If Volkov released the trigger, or if his heart stopped instantly, the entire building would collapse into a tomb. The mission parameters shifted instantly. They could not simply storm the room. Outside, a cartel sentry patrolling the north wall deviated from his predicted path. He turned abruptly, walking directly toward the concealed position of the Bravo team snipers. There was no room for error. An operator rose from the sand like a mirage, utilizing a Winkler combat knife to neutralize the threat. The action was soundless. The guard slid to the ground without a cry. The biometric monitors in the command center showed the operator heart rate surge to 145 beats per minute before settling back down. The assault coordinator whispered the command to execute 3 times over the encrypted radio network. 875 yards away, a sniper lay prone on a limestone ridge. He looked through the scope of a Barrett MRAD rifle, chambered in the massive .338 Lapua Magnum cartridge. The wind was gusting at 15 miles per hour from the west. He had to calculate the Coriolis effect, the spin drift, and the bullet drop. He was not aiming for the head. The target was the elbow. The round crossed the desert floor in less than 2 seconds. It punched through 1.2 inches of bulletproof glass with a high-pitched crack. The bullet impacted Volkov's right arm, just above the elbow joint, completely severing the limb. The arm and the detonator fell to the floor together. The dead man's switch remained depressed by the severed hand muscles for a fraction of a second before sliding free. But the signal was jammed by the immense shock of the impact. Simultaneously, Delta Force operators detonated water impulse charges on the exterior walls. The fluid mechanics of the explosion pushed the concrete inward without creating a lethal overpressure wave that would harm the hostages. The room filled with the sharp report of suppressed rifle fire. The close-quarters battle in the narrow corridors was a blur of violence. Spent brass casings chimed against the concrete floor like rain. The operators moved with aggressive speed, clearing corners and neutralizing threats with double taps to the chest and head. There was no shouting, only the rhythmic thud of rounds impacting body armor and flesh. Volkov screamed as he was pinned to the ground by an operator who applied a tourniquet to the stump of his arm, keeping him alive for interrogation. The capture of Volkov did not end the danger. As the team secured the warlord, a fail-safe protocol initiated on the facility mainframe. An artificial intelligence system detected the breach and began a demolition countdown. The digital readout on the wall turned red. 2 minutes remaining. SEAL Team 6 moved to the holding cells. The locks were electronic and encrypted. Using high-speed breaching saws, they cut through the steel bolts of 50 separate containment units. The sparks flew in long arcs, illuminating the terrified faces of the children inside. Outside, the roar of twin rotors announced the arrival of the extraction support. An MH-47 Chinook heavy transport helicopter flared hard over the compound, ignoring the taking of fire from scattered resistance. The rear ramp dropped onto the burning courtyard. It became a race against physics. The operators began carrying the children, running through the smoke and debris. Every second was measured in strides. The countdown timer on the wall hit 10 seconds as the last operator leaped onto the ramp of the hovering helicopter. The Chinook lifted off, banking hard to the east. 5 seconds later, the desert floor erupted. The shockwave overtook the helicopter, rattling the airframe and shaking the onboard cameras violently. The compound was consumed by a fireball that reached 300 feet into the dawn sky. The evidence of the prison was gone, turned to ash and molten steel. The casualty report was finalized in the air. 200 hostages were secured and alive. 2 operators sustained severe shrapnel wounds, but were stable. 45 hostile mercenaries were confirmed killed in action or detained. The sun rose over Nellis Air Force Base, illuminating a scene of tragic relief. Rows of children wrapped in silver space blankets sat on the tarmac, tended to by medics. Their eyes were vacant, processing the trauma of their captivity. Viktor Volkov was wheeled off a separate transport, his face pale from blood loss. Yet as he was escorted by armed military police, a disturbing smile played on his lips. It was the smile of a man who knew a joke that no one else understood. The reason for his confidence was discovered by NSA specialists examining his captured laptop. 10 seconds before the sniper bullet had severed his arm, Volkov had successfully executed a data transmission. The file was an encrypted ledger. Intelligence analysts managed to decrypt the header information. It was a client list. The names associated with the purchase orders for the children were not foreign warlords or anonymous criminals. The preliminary scan revealed addresses in the most exclusive neighborhoods of Washington, D.C. and New York City. A final message flashed on the screen of the captured device. It read that the head of the snake had been removed, but the venom was already in the blood. This morning we celebrate a tactical victory. We saved innocent lives and neutralized a monster. But the raid on Operation Silent Sand suggests that the war is far from over. The enemy is not just at the border or in the desert. The enemy may be walking the halls of our own institutions, sitting in our boardrooms, and influencing our laws. The Department of Justice has sealed the contents of the laptop, citing national security concerns. However, sources indicate that the list contains names that would shatter the public trust in the very fabric of society. Do you want to know who is on that list? Do you want to understand the depth of the corruption? Subscribe to our channel now. In our next investigation, we will attempt to decode the classified file known as Project Medusa.